What will your future look like? The job you do today could be different than the jobs of tomorrow. Some see this as a challenge. At UCF, we see opportunity. A chance for you to grow your knowledge and strengthen your skills from anywhere life might take you. With in-demand degree programs and resources for your success, UCF Online can help you prepare for the future and all the possibilities that come with it.
From the University of Central Florida Center for Distributed Learning, I'm Tom Cavanaugh.
And I am Kelvin Thompson.
And you are listening to Topcast, the teaching online podcast. Greetings, Kelvin.
Greetings, Earthling Tom.
You got those live long and prosper going. For those not on video, you didn't see Kelvin's dexterous Spock sign.
That's right. Peace and long life. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, yeah.
Infinite
That's
diversity
cool.
in infinite combination. IDIC.
I'm sorry to tell you this, but your nerd is showing.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I try to tuck it in, but sometimes it's just gonna fly.
It's all right.
Sadly.
I got my own nerd issues, so I think
Nerd issues.
yeah. Speaking
Is
for
there
myself.
a recovery group for that?
Yeah, I'm taking a daily pill to keep me from continually talking about Lord of the Rings or
Okay, all right.
Harry
Yeah,
Potter
sure.
or something. Yeah.
I'd be impressed if you could just break out in Elvish one day. I think that would be awesome.
I'm not that level of nerd. Yeah.
I did read the
Unfortunately.
Silmarillion once.
Did you? That's on
Yeah.
my bucket list.
Oh, that's a
yeah,
thing.
I
Yeah.
haven't been able to get myself through it. Yeah, but there is
it's
a
dense.
new. It is. There's a new Amazon series coming out based on the Second Age. Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, huge,
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, budget.
Is that a Peter Jackson thing too, or is it a whole? Oh wow, okay.
think so.
Now see, now I got something to go look up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See now? Oh, I'm sorry, I got to tuck in my nerd too.
Yeah,
this
see,
show.
there you go. Yeah, it's showing again. We could have a whole spin-off podcast.
We could. Yeah.
Although
Welcome
I think there's
to.
plenty of them already.
Yeah, there probably are. It's probably way more than there are about online learning.
I
Yeah.
imagine that's true. Stick to what we know better.
like coffee, which you know very well. So before we clicked record, you came in here and you poured a couple of drams here in my iHeart Topcast mug, and I have been sipping while we've prepped. So I'm enjoying. Why don't you tell me what's in the thermos?
Sure. Today's coffee, Tom, is a medium roast, single origin Ethiopia from Red Bay Coffee Roasters in Oakland, California. They're so proud of it that they named this coffee King's Prize. And you might know this because I think we might have said it before. A lot of Ethiopias have I guess we'd say a delicacy to them. Quite often you hear notes of blueberry. First time I had a really good Ethiopia as a Florida native, I got notes of muscadine grapes, which is in both cases, there's this tartness. I got this coffee, though, through a coffee service that I use sometimes that recommends coffees based upon my preferences. And as long as flags are flying, so they seem to send me coffees they think are, quote, funky and fruity, unquote. Make of that whatever you will. I appreciate the subtleties and complexities that are inherent in these kind of coffees, and then a good roaster kind of enhances. Yes, I know, funky and fruity takes both a good coffee of origin and the careful tending by the farmers, and then careful handling by the roasters to make it just right, funky and fruity. I will let that flag fly.
Okay.
How's the coffee? You said it was good, and how's the connection?
Yeah, I do like the coffee.
You said what connection?
Yeah, so
You said what connection?
I don't think funky and fruity is the connection. No, knowing what I know about what we're talking about today, but you did say that they kind of customized it a little bit for your own, what they perceive your own personal tastes are. So maybe if I look really closely at that, there might be something there.
Yeah, I think that, and the whole attention to subtleties, right? There are nuances and characteristics, and the interplay between the coffee growers and processors and the coffee roasters. Have I think a little bit to do with today. That's what I was shooting for. I'm going to get back on my A game one of these months, Tom. It's gonna be right there again. I know it.
2022 is the year, Kelvin.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope. We're right there early today, but it could be. It'll only get better from here.
So why don't you share with our listeners why you selected this coffee and why you think that interplay is relevant?
Yeah. Okay, sure. All right. So sometimes in these episodes or in the Topcast Insider newsletters, which, hey, you can subscribe free, we encourage our listeners to talk back to us with reactions or suggestions or show ideas, questions, whatever. Some do, and thank you very much. But one particularly memorable contact was from a listener who recently sent in his own 7-minute video recording and sort of mini pitch of an episode topic based upon his own presentations as an instructional designer. So we thought it was so awesome that we would just play it for you before commenting further. So this is going to come to us from a long-time Topcast listener, member of the community, instructional designer Tim McKean, who is currently at Arizona State University's Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts, part of Herberger Online. And I thought this was brilliant. You want to say anything about this before we cut to it? This is not an interview. This is just a little, it's reminiscent of that. But anything you want to say before we let Tim speak?
Maybe just one thing that I agree that I thought it was terrific. And I think when you and I both kind of watched it separately, we both had the same idea. It's like, we got to play this because we're not going to do it better than Tim does it. No. So, I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was a really interesting way of thinking about, course design. And we wanted to share it with everybody. So definitely thought it was a good show topic. And let's turn the show over to Tim.
Hey, Kelvin and Tom, this is Tim McKean. I'm an instructional designer out at Arizona State University out in Tempe, Arizona. And I've been a long time listener of the podcast, but I wanted to share with you a possible podcast topic that comes with its own coffee connection. And the connection was so great and it was so applicable, especially very connected to your recent episode about faculty and the role and value that faculty play in online course design, that I wanted to share this with you and maybe give you a topic to bring up on the show as well. So I've been working on this conference presentation around this idea of light roast course design. And I'm not locked in on that title yet because you'll see later on that maybe light roast isn't actually what you want. But I know Kelvin loves his single origin light roasts or medium roasts or things like that. And so I came up with this presentation that I gave to my team, and I'm thinking of submitting it to some local conferences. But it's based on this idea that, that coffee is a cherry, right? That comes, and at some point it's grown and it has a life of its own as a fruit before it, moves on to becoming our favorite drink. And so it's grown, it's harvested. At some point it's processed, it's dried, and there are different methods for drying and different methods for natural processing or washing them. And then at some point it gets roasted by a roaster. And there is all of these chemical things that happen in the roasting, and there's this huge spectrum. And I know, Kelvin, you already know all this probably. There's this huge spectrum, and depending on where the roaster stops the roasting process, it can bring out different aspects of that. And that's how we end up with all these flavors that we're always talking about, hints of cherry or spicy or sugary or things like that. They don't actually add those flavors in. It's just where the acids are at the time that the roasting stops. And I found this really cool flavor wheel for coffee roasters that there are ways of, I don't know, I guess there's ways of maybe targeting or thinking about the different kind of flavors that you're extracting from your roast. I really liked these descriptions here of how the characteristics of the different roast levels, where in a light roast, the origin of the beans are the most distinct. And then in the medium roast, you start to balance that flavor. Medium dark gets a little bittersweet. And then in the dark roast, the original flavor is gone and the flavor of the roasting process comes out. And in my research, I came across this idea that the less a food is cooked, the more you taste the work of the farmer. The more a food is cooked, the more you taste the work of the chef. So if you're eating a raw apple, what you're tasting is completely the product produced by that apple farmer. But if you're eating an apple pie, what you're tasting is much more based on the work of the baker and very much less the quality of the apple to some degree. And so I make this connection to our course design process. The less a course is cooked, for a lack of a better term, the more you taste the work of the instructor, the more you get the personality of the instructor, the more you get the character of the instructor, maybe the very unique aspects of that instructor. And the more a course is cooked, the more you taste the work of the production team. That's my production team over here on the right side. And we had a great conversation about different courses and where they sit on that spectrum. We've had some courses, like you can see Liz Lerman here on the slide. She's got a great personality. She's got a great passion for her subject of dance and leadership and different things that she's connected to dance. And so when we were building her course, we wanted to make sure that we were keeping her personality genuine, that we were keeping her presence, keeping her uniqueness in the course. And a lot of schools, and some big schools, I won't name any, that are very heavily templatized, are kind of like that dark roast kind of thing, and I think you guys have talked about before, like the reason that Starbucks or some of the big chains kind of do dark roast is because once you've roasted it to a certain degree, it almost doesn't matter how good the bean was to start with. You've come out with something that's good enough, or that's very uniform and reliable and predictable. And that's kind of what happens when schools use these very templatized, very standardized kind of approaches to course design. You come out with something that's going to be very consistent, something that's going to be very reliable. It's going to work every time, but it doesn't have character. It doesn't have any uniqueness. And the unique character of the origin, or the unique character of the instructor, has kind of been cooked out of it. So that's the connection to all of that idea of that the degree that you process a course in the design process, you can actually process the instructor out, or you can work really hard to keep the character of that instructor involved. And like I said, the example of Liz here, we worked really hard to make sure that her character, her personality, her uniqueness shone through the course, because she's a great instructor. We wanted to highlight her work and her ideas. But I've also had courses that came to me because the instructor was lacking, because the course was getting bad reviews, and say, okay, you can go work with Tim and build an online course to kind of mediate the instructor's unique issues out of the course, so that the course worked better, so that the course was more reliable, was more standard. So that was a course where we did want more of that dark roast kind of a feeling, because we needed to remove some of the more untasty qualities of the instructor. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to share it with you guys. If you want to talk more, you have my email address. Hopefully it leads to a good conversation at the least. Thanks for all your work on the show and everything you guys do. Thanks. Bye. And
we're back. So let's have some more of that, right? Listeners who write in, talk back, write their own episode. Write their own episode.
Yeah, makes our job a lot easier.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was brilliant though, right?
It was great, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. It certainly exceeded my expectations of the kind of feedback we get from listeners.
Oh man, new bar,
yeah.
You can all write in. You don't have to be at Tim McKean level, right?
We take email suggestions too.
All the time.
Actually,
Twitter,
we've done a number of shows based on email suggestions.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Stop talking about coffee. Well, I don't know if we would take that advice.
Yeah. I thought this was a show about online learning. Yes.
With coffee.
With coffee. Yeah. No, hey, we got to feed the beast. We always have to find stuff to talk about. So if you have things that you want to hear, we're all for getting feedback. Yeah.
But that Tim, he knows both his coffee and his instructional design, I would say.
He does. Yeah. I learned a lot about coffee. As much as I've learned from you, I still have more to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I learned stuff. Absolutely.
I had a couple of thoughts.
Please do.
So I had two. One is it reminded me a little bit of the accessibility construct that we have, where the more proactive you are, the more it's the faculty member kind of owning it.
Yeah, I got
and
you.
the more reactive you are, the more it's like the instructional design team and everybody else has to just do it.
Yeah. I can see that.
So that I thought was an interesting analog, a callback to a previous discussions that we've had.
We'll put a link to that previous episode discussion in the show notes. I can't remember the episode number right this moment. We'll put it in the show notes if you're curious about that.
Yeah, I should have looked it up, but I didn't. And then the other is, I'm kind of hearkening back to my prior experience at another university where we used master course templates that were pretty locked down. There was a mechanism for updating it by the people who teach it, but it was a process, right? As opposed to kind of where we are now, where it's a lot more faculty autonomy, and our job is to help realize the faculty's vision of the course.
Right.
And those seem to be on two ends of this same kind of spectrum. Not to say that there isn't variability in each of those, but I couldn't help but kind of like place myself into Tim's framework a little bit.
I think that's good. I think just to kind of hone in on what seemed to me to be kind of his kind of central device in all this, less cooked equals more of the farmer or instructor in the case of course design, and more cooked equals more of the chef or roaster or kind of the design process or the ID, the instructional designer. And I thought, I can just chew on just that for a while, just to kind of think that holds up a lot. I'm sure it breaks down ultimately, all analogies and metaphors do, but there's a lot that's instructive in that, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, as it so often does, the answer to what's right for your institution is it depends, right? Because there's individual context, there's individual culture, there's different reasons for doing things, and you could find yourself at different points on that light roast to dark roast spectrum, maybe even within an institution at various points, depending upon what you're doing and why you're doing it. But understanding kind of the impact of those decisions, I think, is one of the more valuable things that Tim sort of put a light on.
Yeah, I think that's right. It also reminded me, Tom. I think we've talked about this before, and maybe there's some resources we can put in the show notes on this too. But our former UCF colleague, Dr. Bill Phillips, he had a line of scholarly inquiry around what he called the instructor persona, not to be confused with like the idea of instructor presence from the community of inquiry model, but instructor persona. And I think it kind of touches Tim McKean's comments a little bit, because Bill's thing was kind of this how you project yourself as the instructor into this designed environment, and kind of the ethos. How does that ethos come across, and all of that. At least that's my stumbling attempt to summarize Bill's work. But did that seem reminiscent to you of that too?
Yeah, I get that too. Yeah, because Bill's persona work was a lot about how do you put your personality into an asynchronous online course, because when you're standing up in front of a room talking to people in person, it's your personality is like the medium is the message. It's part of why and how people engage with you. It's much harder online. And so how do you carry that across? And we've had faculty do all kinds of things. We have pictures of their pets and their cats and everything, right. Their kids.
I got mental pictures of particular colleagues that are popping up in my head right now.
Of course, yeah. And they'll be the first to tell you that they do that so that the students can connect with them personally.
That's right.
Which makes it easier for them to teach them, right? Yep. So all of that is kind of baked in. I think about when we were having some conversations a while ago with our College of Education, and they had asked for their faculty to, when they went through our faculty development process, to not just build a course for themselves, but to build a generic version of the course that kind of belonged to the college. So that, if they left or if they needed to get that course taught, they had a version that was sort of like a vanilla version of the course. But then the faculty were told, okay, take that and then you jazz it up however you want, to teach it for yourself, so put your pictures of your pets and stuff in, but don't put that in the template version that gets shared potentially with an adjunct or somebody else. And, it's a way to sort of kind of thread the needle of both ends of this light roast, dark roast spectrum a little bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's good, helpful context, and it's not surprising to come from a college of education where there are experts in the whole teaching and learning process at a deep level, so they get that nuance. And I get the context from your prior institution where there's more of a reliance on a standardized or templated or master course kind of a framework.
And there was a particular reason for that, obviously. I mean, it was there were a lot of adjuncts, and the courses were designed by full-time and mostly tenure-track faculty that kind of owned them, but they were taught by a lot of adjuncts literally all over the world. So that locked down template, the dark roast, is a quality control measure as much as anything else.
No, right. I get it. To me, all of that underscores we talk about this a lot here. I don't remember how much we talked about this on mic, but there's an interplay between design and teaching, right? And you can here's the course design, and we can sort of separate that over here, and you can do like a standards-based course design review to kind of put a stamp of yay, good for you, quality on it or something. But then there's teaching, and even in your context that you were describing from your past institution, while you want that quality assurance of the course design, you still hopefully have hired skillful adjuncts who are then going to bring in the lived experience, not in the designed environment, but in the lived experience, are going to bring themselves into that through their own expertise in responsiveness and follow-up and feedback and intervention, all those kinds of things. So it is an interplay, right?
Yeah, and that of course was part of the training.
Of course.
Like, here's how you use announcements and the discussion board to like be yourself and to communicate on a one-on-one basis with your class. And then there was, like I said, a mechanism for feedback that would inform course design updates based on the experience of actually teaching it. But yeah, it was from this foundation though that was sort of immutable. And then you kind of you dressed it up with your own personality.
Yeah, I don't want to stretch Tim's illustration to the breaking point, but I do wonder, though, the more that you're toward that design-heavy, dark roast kind of emphasis, maybe there is more of a distinct separation between design and teaching versus if you're down on that other end of the spectrum, that light roast, so much of the farmer or the instructor's design influence and presence, maybe it's much harder to disentangle design and teaching at that level.
Yeah, I could see that. I think about a course that might be like a special topics course on current events or something, and you kind of don't know what the topic's going to be from week to week, if whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
If you're in a discussion board and you're going to have a weekly synchronous kind of check-in, and then you have an asynchronous discussion. I don't know, I'm just making up a course right now, but that's one that's going to sort of rely on the faculty, the professor, to kind of structure and facilitate that kind of on the fly. It's not something that you can build the bare bones sort of outline, but the actual content and stuff is probably going to be constructed as you go along, and that is about as light roast as you can probably get.
Yeah, it also reminds me, some of this conversation reminds me of our recent-ish episode on faculty voice and faculty valuing, right? I mean, some of this is that, right? It's what do you bring to the table? But then there is, as we said in that episode, there is value that other professionals bring to the table, instructional designers, professional media producers, and so forth. Would it be helpful, just to, maybe we don't have time to get into this exhaustively, but it would be helpful just to kind of recap at a high level, Tom, just what is the value add of instructional design? Like the light roast, as we were kind of talking about a lot here, right? But there is value in relying on professional instructional designers and others. So what kind of things come to your mind when we talk about the value add of instructional design?
Well, there's a number of compliance things that they can just help with. Things like accessibility and usability, stuff that you just need, like table stakes kinds of issues that need to be built into a course. Now, that's probably not the most value add that an instructional designer can bring, but it maybe is like the step one of the ladder, the first rung as you're starting to construct things. So that's kind of one area.
And in fact, to your point, I can remember some teaching faculty colleagues who've gone through our voluntary course design review process and get feedback. And I remember some folks saying, "Yep, my course is much more accessible now." And see, that's after the fact review, not upfront design, but after the fact feedback. And okay, from an instructional designer's perspective, like you said, you're more standards based, and that benefits students, right?
Sure.
I also think about things like alignment between, the intended learning outcomes, the content presentation, opportunities for interaction between and among students and faculty, and learning assessment. I think there's kind of a clothesline of alignment there that you want to see a through line through.
Well, you've just described sort of the center, the bullseye for the value proposition of instructional design. It's all of that. What I like to also say around maybe the next ring around that would be, at least our instructional designers try to add the kind of value to a course that a faculty member didn't even know was possible.
Yes.
So that they might have this vision for their course, but it's limited by their own understanding of online instruction. Sure. And we bring to bear these consultants who are experts in online instruction, who might say, well, have you thought about this? And the faculty member's like, I didn't even know I could do that. Those are the stories I love to hear, where we take a faculty member's vision and we put it on steroids and can kind of bring, mediated through the instructional designer, all the resources of the department to bear, whether it's media production or programming or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if Tim would agree with this or not, but maybe as we talk and we begin to wrap this conversation up around Tim's work, it strikes me that maybe, like in so many things, maybe a balance is best. The uniqueness of the instructor's persona and expertise, along with good design practices that benefit students. There are probably times that you want the full dark roast. There's probably times that you want the full light roast. So I don't know if that means medium roast is the is the target, but some kind of a balance. Maybe that's if you're going to pick one as a general approach, maybe that's the way to go.
Sure. Yeah, there's some days I feel like having a little bit of a stronger cup of coffee, and
I gotcha.
there's some days where maybe a little bit lighter, or maybe I want a decaf in the afternoon. I mean, who knows? I think everyone is called for it in a different circumstance and for a different purpose, but they all kind of have their place on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to try to land the plane for us?
Sure. So I think Tim would agree that almost any worthwhile endeavor benefits from collaboration, and effective course design obviously is no different. So the partnerships between faculty and instructional designers can bring about a design that we think is cooked just enough. In the words of our friend Goldilocks, it's just right.
Yeah. Well, our friend Goldilocks.
Yes, yeah, my close personal acquaintance Goldilocks.
This has been Fractured Fairy Tales. Oh my, no, that's good. I think that's good.
All right, so coffee is kind of run out. Thank you very much for the generous Ethiopian bean. Thank you especially to Tim McKean for sending in that, and hopefully he's inspired all of you listening to do something similar, or even just an email with something that you think is of interest to the community. We'd be happy to talk about it.
That's topcast@ucf.edu.
That's right, thank you. Until next time, for Topcast, I'm Tom.
I'm Kelvin.
See ya.